Hey, how's it going? It's a nice day out today and I'm sitting out in the backyard by my orange tree and I am going to do a 1 week review. Now that's a little bit weird for me to say because I don't think a week is long enough to review anything, but I'm going to help you try and understand some of the questions that are out there in the first week of this product's release. This is the Fujifilm X-H2s and I'm going to help answer some questions. I'm sure that there's plenty of videos out there, but these are also my impressions of working with it on production firmware for the first week. Alright, so first up is the autofocus. I don't hold the autofocus in too high of a regard, but everybody wants to know about it. For what I do, if you watch any of my videos or see any of my photographs, the autofocus works fine. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever. You can watch this video here where I did a little bit of testing, and I'll put a clip in here. And you can see here where I'm moving it back and forth, and this is in area autofocus in video mode. So this is not with face eye detect on, it is just doing its thing, best guess, and it is working perfectly for what I am doing it for. Now, I usually shoot with face eye auto detect on when I'm shooting video, unless there's a certain circumstance. But anyway, it works fine for me, and comparing it to other cameras, I don't really use a lot of other cameras, but compared to my R6, I don't want to say it's even. The R6 is probably always going to be a little bit superior because it has the patented dual pixel autofocus. Whereas this, I'm not sure how this is doing it really. It's probably phase detect, but it's just really good at it. I don't know. But yeah, the R6 will probably always be superior, but as far as the differences, to me, I can't really tell a difference, and I haven't had any trouble with it in video, nor have I had any trouble with it in photo. Now, like I said earlier, I don't really use autofocus the same way everybody else does. As long as I can use the focus stick or the joystick, move the focus point, and then it locks on when I half shutter press, then I'm good to go most of the time. And then in video, as you can see from the clip, that it was fine. Now, is it fast? I mean, yeah, it seems pretty fast. The lens I'm using most of the time is this 16mm f1.4. and it's old and it's not very fast. So if I do something like this and then turn it around, especially if it's washed out and bright like it is like here, it does take a second for it to focus, and that's mostly because the motor in it's a little bit old and a little bit slower. So I don't hold that against the camera itself. The camera itself is doing a great job of detecting what I want to focus on, and I think will work in most cases for most people. And then compared to some older cameras, like my older 6D Mark II Canon that I used to use, if you're used to that and still using a camera like the 6D Mark II, this camera is going to be significantly better than that. I know some people that are still using like 6D Mark IIs, 5D Mark IVs and things like that for wedding photography, and I think that if they were to pick this camera up, they would notice a significant improvement even over what they're currently using. So I don't think that the autofocus is bad. I think that it will work for most people, and for me so far it's been great. So far, image quality has been great. You can see I'll put a couple example photos up here, and then we'll move into some example video here that I took. I took some example video here at the Santa Monica Pier, and then you can see that it's pretty good in low light. Even in low light, I shot all this at 6.2K. And then here's some from Chinatown as well. 6.2K, you can see it's great getting detail out of the shadows. This is all graded f-log, so I even pushed shadows into some of this footage, and yet it looks great. So I don't think that there's any compromise in image quality. I did notice a significant improvement in video. I don't know if it's just because the resolution is higher. I can't see that being the reason that it gets better detail out of the shadows, but I think that the only thing I'm doing is actually going to 422 10-bit in 6.2K at 360 megabits per second, whereas on the X-T4 I would typically shoot in 4K 420 10-bit all eye, same as this. Really the only thing that's changed is I'm shooting at 6.2K and a lower bit rate. Now, it still looks better to me. It might just be like me, but I think that there are significant improvements here with this camera. And that's one of the things that appealed to me. I think that having a 26.1 megapixel sensor for image quality at least is ideal. And I can get into some technicalities, but let's just say that the pixel density for the size of sensor that we're using didn't increase. So that means, for me at least, it's a little bit better for editing and things like that, and it doesn't really tend to fall apart when you put LUTs or change colors or things like that, whereas higher resolution images, in my opinion, especially in smaller sensors like these APS-C and Micro Four Thirds, tend to start to get really crispy when you start editing them. And I think that has to do with the fact that not only are the pixels smaller, because you have to make them smaller to fit in the area of the sensor, but they're packed more tightly, so the boundaries between pixels become a little compromised and fuzzy when you start to edit them. So I think that having the 26.1 megapixel sensor is actually great for the image quality, and so far I'm impressed. But you can let me know what you think down here about these two videos. I'll also link the videos, the full videos of the Santa Monica Pier, and then the other one from Chinatown if you want to see those as well. Okay, so now let's talk about performance of the camera. I'm pleased with it. Physically, the body isn't too much different than an X-T4. A lot of people miss having a dial here. I don't really care one way or another, as long as I can use the camera. And I'm kind of used to, I had an R6 before this that had a PASM dial here, but it just had on-off switch on this side. So really, it's not too much different than a lot of the other cameras that I've been using. And so far, I can tell you, they've advertised that the battery life on the same batteries is going to be better because they have a more efficient processor. However, that is probably true, but also while shooting 6.2K, higher bit rates and things like that with faster cards, I have noticed that the battery lasts significantly longer than the X-T4 in similar settings. It's not really a huge deal breaker because I have enough of the batteries and I take them in my backpack with me all the time that it doesn't really matter as much to me. But be mindful of that and maybe change the settings, because you can change it to economy, performance, EVF priority, low light priority, things like that. Be mindful of which one you're in and how long you want it to actually run, because the batteries do, in my testing for the last week, run out significantly faster. I can no longer go out for an entire night of shooting both video and photo on one battery. I have to switch to a second battery before the night's over. Whereas on the X-T4, I could probably do a whole night and still have 20-25% left on one battery. Now, some of that is also probably minuscule, but this screen here is on all the time, and I don't really care for it. I don't think that it's actually necessary. I don't really use it that much. That may change in the future, but the fact that it's on all the time, even though I don't really want it to be, I mean, it would be nice to have an option to turn it off. Even though, like I said, however minuscule, it is draining power, and if I could get an extra 50 shots or an extra 2 minutes of video without the screen, I would take that over having the screen. But other than that, it's great. The ergonomics, great, really similar to the Canon R6. And one of the things I really, really love, it's the little things sometimes, is this is the mic jack here. And check this out. Yeah, so if I insert a mic cord right here, I can still see the full readout of the screen. Unlike the X-T4, right now there's a giant flap in the way, and if you have an ND filter on and you want to see the exposure meter to know how much ND to adjust, you have to end up fiddling with it or holding it back and then doing this, and it gets a little in the way. But this, no problems. Now, let's talk the codecs and stuff like that. So far, everything I've shot has been in 6.2K or 4K 120 on the CF Express Type B. I have a 128 SanDisk here, and it's working pretty good. I can't really tell a difference over an SD card. The settings that I shoot in are typically 6.2K all-I, 360 megabits a second, H.265, and those can be done to the V60 card as well, which is what I have in here. I've got a V60 SD card in slot 2, this old Lexar, and it works great, even with the 6.2K. Now if you jump it up to 720 megabits, it'll probably still work on the V60 as long as you don't jump out of the all-I codec. It does tell you ProRes available when you have a CF Express Type B in there. I don't know if it actually writes too much faster if you're using the CF Express Type B in All-I, probably not, but it does, it works well, and so far the file sizes have been a little bit, not larger, but just the sheer amount of data and resolution that is taken in when you record in 6.2K has got even my M1 MacBook Pro, with, it only has 16 gigs of RAM, but I have never had any problem or trouble editing any of the All-I 4K footage. But when I jump up to the 6.2K clips, it does get a little bit choppy. Now that's more on my computer, doesn't have anything to do with the camera, but for anyone out there that might be wondering, it does get a little bit choppy when you go into 6.2K. So if you're wanting to work with ProRes, make sure you've got the power to edit it too. Alright, so likes and dislikes. So far, my only dislike, like I said, is the battery draining. But that's sort of neither here nor there. But as far as the camera goes, put the battery back in here. My only dislike is the fact that it has a dedicated menu inside the photo menu, and I'll see if I can show you this. I don't have a recorder, so I can't really record the output. But if you look here, if I can get it to focus on the screen without it jumping to my eye, because eye detect is on, so it's wanting to go to my face. So if you look here, see where I'm on image quality. Oops, sorry. And I go down to here. These are the video settings that are available to you in photo mode. Right, so we can go into these settings, and you can see, yeah, movie mode. So you can see your IS boost and all that stuff. Sorry, I'm reading backwards on the screen, but here's your movie list setup, and you'll notice that, it's on my eye again. You'll notice that there aren't any, you can't do F-Log. I typically shoot everything in F-Log, even my vlogs, all of it. It's just easy. I have presets saved in my editors that I built for, you know, different scenarios, shadows and things like that. And so if I'm in photo mode and I'm taking pictures and then all of a sudden I quickly want to turn around and vlog it, I can't just hit the record button. It won't be an F-Log, which isn't that big of a deal, but it would be nice to have all my footage the same. So what I've done is I've just programmed the dial here to go from M to C1, and that's how I switch between them. So C1 is the same, it's 6.2K, it's my preferred video settings basically, and it's right next to the M. So okay, so while I was editing that footage, I realized that the clip cut off early, and then I looked at the camera and realized that it was frozen. Even though I had taken the SD card out and edited the footage and everything, the camera was actually still on and stuck in a sort of a weird situation. Now that's one thing I want to comment on. That did happen to me with the X-H2s. It was a special circumstance, I think. I hope it was. I hope that maybe they'll address issues like that in a firmware update if they happen again. But what happened was, and this goes along with this dial, what happened was, I was in C1, which is the custom mode that I had for video, and I wanted to take a picture very quickly. The battery was low. It was like 15%, maybe less. I don't know. It just had a red thing around it, and it was recording video. While it was recording, I switched into photo mode without stopping the recording first, and it froze. I couldn't, whatever it was looking at was stuck on the screen. The only thing that was working was the level. When I jiggled the camera, the level would go like this, but the image was static, and even if I turned it off, the image still stayed on the screen. I had to actually take the battery out and put it back in. And that seems to be the same thing that happened just now to the X-T4 while I was recording. But anyway, to pick up where I left off, so maybe it's a Fuji thing, I don't know. Hopefully it never happens again. The camera's under warranty, so if it does, we'll get it fixed, or maybe they'll do it. And I've seen it happen to, even to my R6 has done things like that before. But anyway, to pick up where I left off, nice to haves. Not too many, because I love this camera, but I would like to see some of the competition, at least on the video side, like the GH5 and GH6, where we can have waveforms and RGB parades and things like that on the screen. That would be really nice. Also, what I think would really be something, only the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema line, I think, does this at the current moment, which is the ability to be able to record out of the USB port to a Samsung T5 or T7 hard drive. Small rig actually makes little clamps that go on a cage that clamp a small hard drive to the side. That would be great. Now, since the drives are powered via USB port, that would drain the battery faster. So I would imagine that you would need to buy more batteries or hook it to a V-mount. Especially since the USB port would be taken up by the drive, you can't power it by the USB port, but it still would be nice. Even if they require the cooling fan option to do that, it would be nice to have that much more room, that much cheaper. The cooling fan is 200 bucks. A Samsung T7 can be had for around 130 bucks. So you're looking at like $330 for like a lot longer record times in ProRes, possibly even RAW. The Blackmagic does it to the same drive. I don't see why this couldn't do it as well. That would be a really, really big benefit here, I think. Now, also, along with the drive, I think that it was in some of the other reviews I watched, the early production models. I don't know why Fuji did that. I think that was a bad idea, sending out all of these pre-production models and letting the reviewers say, oh, the production firmware will be better. It's part of why I'm doing this, because it seems to be a lot better than what a lot of the reviews say. But also the pre-production model, apparently on one of the videos I watched, I'm gonna try and pull this out, didn't show that there is actually a little piece here that you can remove. Kind of like, I don't know how, if you can fully remove it, but it moves out of the way just enough to allow you to close the camera and still have a cord coming out for a dummy battery. The review I watched said that that wasn't there, but apparently it's there now, and that's what that's for. So having a dummy battery attached to a V-mount, D-tap, whatever, and being able to record out would be fantastic. Other than that, camera's great. I love it. I'm probably not going to review it again unless they come out with new firmware. Even then, I probably won't review it again until I've had at least 6 months under my belt, not just a week. But let me know if any of these help you, or if it's different from any other reviews, or if you have any more questions, put them down in the comments. I'll try to answer them, or maybe reshoot the video if there's more than, you know, just a few questions. But anyway, so far so good, great. I recommend the camera. It's very good, or at least maybe if you have some place around you that can rent the camera, try and rent it first, see if you believe me, or if, you know, see what you're hearing about the camera is true. I do recommend it. It is a significant improvement over the X-T4 or the X-T3 for anyone that uses those, and I think that even Canon users like myself that have previously had R6s will be very happy with this camera. And I'm going to end it there before the sun gets lower and starts blowing out the video.